Hi, this is Vince again from Martial Arts Insight. This is the second video that I'm making today. I just went and took an onsen this afternoon, so I'm feeling very relaxed right now, even a little bit drowsy. So the second fight I want to talk about at UFC 141 is the Nate Diaz versus Donald Cerrone fight. A lot of people had this touted as being a surefire win for Fight of the Night awards, and it actually did win the Fight of the Night award, rightly so. But for different reasons than I think what people were expecting. I think a lot of people were expecting the fight to be an all-out war between Nate Diaz and Donald Cerrone. Both of them were hyped up before the fight. They didn't seem to like each other. Whether that was hype or how much of it was real, we don't really know. But I think people were expecting an all-out war. What actually happened was something very different, and in many ways the fight was very one-sided. Nate Diaz took the victory over Donald Cerrone, winning a points victory. And there are two primary reasons why I think Nate Diaz was able to win over Donald Cerrone. Going back, however, to before the actual fight started, I think a lot of people had the fight as being very evenly matched. Personally, as far as the stand-up was concerned, if I had had to choose, I would have given the advantage to Donald Cerrone. Because with his Muay Thai background, I thought that he had a lot more versatility over Nate Diaz. I think Donald Cerrone is more capable of fighting at different striking ranges compared to Nate Diaz, who's principally a boxer. What actually happened in the fight, however, and the first factor I think in making sure that Nate Diaz could take the win, is that Nate Diaz was very, very skillful in being able to control the range at which the fight took place. And Nate Diaz was able to stay inside the pocket and just land punch after punch on Donald Cerrone. He kept the entire fight pretty much at boxing range. In the second round and the third round, the range did change a little bit, and then you saw Donald Cerrone open up a little bit with some Thai round kicks. But it was too little too late by then. Diaz stayed in boxing range. It was never really a kickboxing match. It never really went into the clinch. It never went into grappling on the ground. It was just a flat-out boxing match, pretty much, which is where Nate Diaz excels at. And Nate Diaz, throughout the match, was able to land not just single jabs, single techniques. He was able to put together, 1, 2, 3 punch combinations, consistently scoring points. And Donald Cerrone just didn't know. Donald Cerrone was just overwhelmed by it. And this brings me on to the second factor I think that was important in determining how Nate Diaz managed to take the victory, which is the study of how both fighters reacted to being hit. Donald Cerrone started to get hit very early in the first round. And from that moment on, he just looked like he had a constant look of surprise on his face. He just never got into his game, and Nate Diaz, I think because of that, was able to impose his will, exert control over the fight, and keep it at the distance that he was most comfortable at. Donald Cerrone is a curious guy, because I've heard him in interviews before saying that it's difficult for him to get motivated prior to the fight, but after he's been hit once, that's when he starts to really open up. But in this particular fight against Nate Diaz, that's not what happened. He didn't just get hit once or twice. I mean, he was getting hit continually throughout the 15 minutes of the match, and he still never seemed to kind of get engaged and wake up to the fact that he was actually in the fight. So I think Cerrone's reaction to being hit was an important factor. Now you contrast that with Nate Diaz, because Nate Diaz did take some shots from Cerrone, nowhere near as many, but he did get hit. And he looked a little bit kind of beaten up after the fight as well. His face was definitely marked. The difference, however, is that when Nate Diaz was hit, there was like this momentary pause, and then he was, back to business again, which was going forward, getting into boxing range and controlling the fight. A few times, starting in the second round, going into third round, he was put onto the ground from the roundhouse kicks that Cerrone was firing out at him. But again, all you saw then was just a longer pause. You know, instead of it being a split second, it was just a second or two while he kind of wiped the dust off his knees, stood up and got back to engaging into the pretty much what was a boxing match rather than a mixed martial arts match. And I think those two factors then, Diaz controlling the range and how both fighters reacted to taking the shots that they did, gave Diaz the decision win at the end. It was a very, very interesting fight to watch. Again, not the war that I think a lot of people were expecting, but a lot of stuff there to study. Very, very enjoyable, and congratulations to Nate Diaz for his victory. So thanks a lot for watching. This is Vince at Martial Arts Insight.